The Answer, the premiere episode of Stevenbomb 4, and a really monumental episode that begins a week of what looks like it's going to be really monumental episodes. Now, spoilers for this episode in the review, obviously. This is a new episode. I could avoid spoilers, but I wouldn't really have a whole lot to talk about if I did. You have been warned. If you have not seen the episode yet, turn back now because this one is a big one. This episode was groundbreaking in that it is the first time that we see an actual example of a thriving gem society. Granted, this was a gem society situated on Earth, not Homeworld, but still, we do get a look at how gems function when they are together in a community. This is also the first time we get a look at the rebellion in any way, shape, or form. Aside from its remnants, obviously, we have seen things like the Strawberry Battlefield. But also, you have to keep in mind that this episode is told from the point of view of Garnet telling a story to Steven. Some of what we see here may not be entirely accurate. This is a mother telling a story to her son. There could be some paraphrasing and downplaying going on here. I just want to keep that in mind. I am going to treat the facts introduced in this episode as if they are facts unless something overtly contradicts them later on. But do keep in mind, while these events are canon, they are entirely open to retcons later on down the line. As I mentioned, this episode starts out with Garnet telling a story to Steven. She backs up 5,700 and some years, I think is what it was. Almost 6,000 years ago, so it about lines up with when the kindergartens were established on Earth. And it is told mostly from Sapphire's perspective, which I thought was kind of interesting, because we find out here that, sorry, all of you who believe in the theory of the hardness scale determining gem ranking, it seems like it is less to do with that and more to do with a ranking scale that the creators themselves came up with. They seem to have designated some gems as common and some gems as rare, and not as in, like, oh, these gems are commoner gems, and these gems are part of a rare aristocracy. No, literally, there are a lot of rubies, but there are only a few sapphires. So therefore, Sapphire is an aristocrat, and Ruby is a commoner. And we see so many things just in the start of this episode that recontextualize a lot of what we've managed to pick up regarding the lore of the show. Sapphire arrives at what is called the Cloud Arena, and definitely looked like it could have been part of the Sky Arena from Sworn to the Sword, to meet with Blue Diamond. We finally have a name drop of another one of the diamonds. Yes, we now know that there is more than one diamond. We have her specifically referred to as a leader of a group of gems from Homeworld. All of this lines up with the generalities of the Diamond Authority theory. And Sapphire has been called to Earth because she has future vision, and Blue Diamond wants to know what's going to happen in regards to the rebellion. I assume she knows that the rebels plan to attack the Cloud Arena at some point, and she wants to have some kind of heads up as to what's going to happen. And assigned to her are 3 rubies, one of which is the ruby that makes up Garnet, along with Sapphire. The other 2 have gems on the back of their right hand and on their right shoulder, which is very interesting, and I'm sure I'll talk about that at another point, so I'm not going to get into the technicalities of everything that means regarding the lore. And the rubies, they specifically mention that they sent 3 of them with Sapphire so that if need be, they could fuse. And so after Sapphire gives her report to Blue Diamond that with her future vision she has foreseen that 7 gems, including 2 of her rubies and herself, will be defeated by the rebels before the rebels are captured and the rebellion ends, Rose and Pearl show up. Just Rose and Pearl, and declare themselves the crystal gems in a very definite way that makes it seem as if they're the only 2. And then they come in, and Pearl is dual-wielding swords, mowing down what look like quartz gems, i.e. gems of equivalent power to Jasper, which I thought was kind of interesting. It makes me wonder what is different about Jasper, the Jasper that we've seen before in the show, that makes her that much stronger than an average quartz soldier. But that's for an entirely different video, obviously. And then the 3 rubies fuse. They synchronize their movements not through dance, but by jumping up and forming a pyramid with their bodies. And then they merge into a giant ruby who was stupid enough to attack Rose Quartz one-on-one. And without even calling a weapon, Rose hits them so hard that they defuse, and then 2 of them poof. And she gets this little smirk on her face right before she attacks him. It was freaking hilarious, because she knew that they didn't stand a chance. And it was nothing really substantial about the scene lore-wise or story-wise. I just think it's a really cool character moment for Rose. She likes to fight. You can tell. It's pretty cool. And then, even though Sapphire has foreseen that she will be poofed, that she will be defeated, as Pearl goes to attack her, Ruby, our Ruby, decides that she can't have that, and she makes a different choice. She makes a choice outside of what Sapphire had foreseen. And she jumps on Sapphire, they spin around in the air, and they fuse by accident, very much the same way that Steven and Connie fused into Stevani, which in and of itself has its own meaning. Because we'd seen a little bit of the interaction between Ruby and Sapphire before this. Ruby bumps into Sapphire, which is obviously a big no-no, as they are substantially different classes. And Sapphire just straight up forgives her for it. I think that's the moment when that little spark of love popped into Ruby's head. And then when Ruby defied fate, at least from Sapphire's perspective, and jumped in the way and saved her, I think that's when that little spark of love popped up in Sapphire's mind and allowed them to fuse. And the two of them, they fuse into a very confused Garnet, not just in terms of, she's literally confused, but her outfit is confused. It's literally made up of parts of Ruby's and Sapphire's outfits. And she doesn't seem to know who she is, if she's Ruby or Sapphire or both of them or neither of them. And you can see all of the other aristocratic gems beginning to bear down on her because this is some kind of atrocity. They've never seen two gems fuse, two different gems fuse, let alone a common gem and a rare gem. In fact, we do get some dialogue here from Blue Diamond. We've gotten some already. We get some additional dialogue here from Blue Diamond and actually get quite a good look at her as well, which was very interesting. And she specifically says to Ruby, after the two of them defuse, obviously, "How dare you fuse with a member of my court," or something along those lines. Almost as if she was less upset that two different types of gems had fused and more upset that it was a commoner who had initiated fusion with an upper class gem. And this is when Sapphire defies fate as well. They're going to shatter Ruby as punishment for what she's done. And Sapphire saves her. She grabs her, much like she grabbed Steven in the handship, and pulls Ruby away at super speed and leaps from the Cloud Arena down to Earth and uses her hover power to land them gently. And she has effectively thrown herself into exile on impulse to save Ruby, just as Ruby had on impulse saved Sapphire. And you get these scenes of them getting to know each other, and we don't know how long they're down on Earth. I would imagine it's actually quite a bit longer than we actually see. I don't think it was literally only as long as what we saw there, because we do know from love letters that the loving relationship between Ruby and Sapphire took a long time to develop. And they sing, and it wasn't the best song. Lyrically speaking, the lyrical structure was a little shaky, but the lyrics were very meaningful. They were very pertinent to the situation. And then there's this melodic refrain that is the melody that Sapphire was singing in the handship. Now we know why that melody means so much to her in the context of her and Ruby and their relationship, and why Garnet built the song Stronger Than You off of that melody, because Sapphire sang it to Ruby when they were falling in love. I'm blown away by how stunningly beautiful that is. And they're so adorable in these scenes. You can see them warming up to each other. You can see them getting to know each other, and then finally they dance with each other and they become Garnet again. The same confused Garnet who doesn't understand who or what she is and is trying to get used to her body. Then she stumbles upon Pearl and calls her terrifying. I don't know if it was at this point or if it was earlier, but at one point she calls Pearl terrifying, which I thought was very interesting. It really speaks to the amount of respect that Garnet has for Pearl as a fighter. And you can see that Pearl is geared up to fight with Garnet until she realizes that Garnet is the fusion from the Cloud Arena. And then, even then, I still think Pearl probably would have attacked her, but then Rose intervenes, and Garnet tries to apologize. She's kind of still in the mindset of both Ruby and Sapphire trying to sort that out, and it seems more like Ruby's in the forefront here because she definitely seems genuinely ashamed of what had happened, and Ruby was the one who felt more ashamed of what had happened earlier on in the episode. And she tries to apologize. She says she'll defuse, but Rose says that she should never apologize for what this is, and specifically says that she can imagine that what Garnet is feeling at this point is very interesting, which I thought was a very interesting choice of words, but let's not get into that here. But she does genuinely seem concerned regarding Garnet and her feelings, and has this immediate respect for Garnet as a person. And Garnet asks her why they want to stay like this, why they want to stay this new person, and Rose says that they already know the answer, that Garnet already knows the answer. And then we snap back out of the flashback, and Garnet tells Steven that that answer is love, which is, of course, an allusion to the title of the episode. Where do I even start with this? We learn so much here, and we can infer so much more. First of all, we see a lot of aristocratic gems on the Cloud Arena, several of which look a heck of a lot like the gems that were surrounding the four-armed statue in Pearl's hologram from Cheeseburger Backpack. And I'll try to find good images of them and include them up here. We also see a gem that is very obviously lapis lazuli amongst the aristocracy, which explains her line, "Did you ever even wonder who I used to be?" She was an aristocratic gem. She was one of those rare, almost unique gems like Sapphire, a member of Blue Diamond's inner circle of her court. It still doesn't explain how she got into the mirror, but it explains why she was so upset about it, and it explains why she recognized Garnet. She was there when Garnet first formed, which kind of completely decimates my Lapis conspiracy theory, but hey, whatever. I honestly don't care when one of my theories is disproven. As far as I'm concerned, when one of my theories is disproven, it's exactly as if it had been proven, because now we know that much more about the show. We also get a couple of really good looks at Blue Diamond, one from the side and one from the front. First of all, Blue Diamond had a pearl right there next to her, another pearl, one with her gemstone on her chest, but still very obviously a pearl. So we get a very clear size comparison between a gem of Pearl's size and Blue Diamond, and she's massive. She's like, I don't know, maybe opal size at the least, much larger than Rose. Let's put it that way. When we get a look at her from the front, we can see her gemstone is in her chest, and that she does not appear to have four arms, though in terms of her dress, she actually seems fairly similar in design to the statue from Pearl's hologram. So I'm going to say it's still up in the air whether or not Blue Diamond could be a fusion. It seems a lot less likely now, but she's wearing this kind of cloak-ish thing that could be hiding her extra arms if she has them. And obviously, if she had another gemstone, it could have been on one of those arms on her back. It could have been hidden. But at this point, it is, I don't think, really safe to assume that she is a fusion any longer. So I'm just going to call that theory debunked until we get some further evidence one way or the other. I do, however, at this point, no longer think that Rose is Pink Diamond. Rose is so much smaller than Blue Diamond, and she is specifically referred to as one of the rebels or as Rose Quartz. She seems almost as if she was an unknown until the rebellion started. And while it does seem like she is significantly more powerful than pretty much any of the other gems that we have seen so far, even in this flashback, even more so than the other quartz gems that we see there, and might be comparable in strength to a diamond, I don't think she was one. We also see a couple of gems that I think could be additional jaspers. Their gemstones are about the right shape, and they are both poofed by Pearl in a single attack, which I thought was kind of interesting. These are a couple of the quartz gems that I mentioned earlier that seem to be much weaker than Pearl at this point, which incidentally is part of the reason why I think some of this might have been Garnet playing down what actually happened, or playing up the skills of her allies, one or the other. But the truth is we can't really know one way or another. All of this is purely speculation at this point, obviously. But finally, the most interesting thing that this episode introduced was the concept that up until this point, only two gems had ever made a choice outside of what was designated by society, and that's Rose and Pearl. We get an explanation of future vision in the episode Future Vision, that Garnet can use her future vision to map out all of the possible choices that someone will make, and then look into their possible futures and determine which one is the most likely. But in this episode, Sapphire treats her future vision as if it's infallible, as if it has never failed before, and what that tells me is that up until this point, no one had ever made a choice. Even Rose and Pearl, who had made a choice to rebel, they were still fighting against gems who were acting within a designated set of parameters. The Homeworld gems were still acting within the parameters set for them by Homeworld, by their society. So even in battle, Rose and Pearl wouldn't have had to make any additional choices other than to attack, because they would have been able to guess the tactics of their enemies because their tactics never changed. And that's how Sapphire was not able to foresee Ruby's impulsive action. She didn't know yet to look for additional possible choices. This is all about choice. This is the moment when Sapphire learned that future vision is valuable, and I'd imagine that probably shook up her entire world. And incidentally, I was really worried that this was going to completely wreck my upcoming Garnet theory, but this just makes it all the stronger. And it also explains how Rose was able to build a much larger rebellion once these two gems, Ruby and Sapphire, had made a very public choice outside of their designated parameters set forth by society. Other gems would have realized that this was possible as well and made the choice to also do so. It was Garnet who sparked the rebellion, at least the meaningful rebellion, the large-scale rebellion that actually allowed Rose and Pearl to win. And that's huge. That might be the single biggest piece of information we have ever gotten about the war, about the rebellion, in the entire history of the series. Guys, in the end, this episode was adorable. It was informative. It recontextualized the lore. As good as the last few episodes before the hiatus were, this one blew them all out of the water, and I certainly hope that they can take the momentum built from this episode and carry it through the entire Stevenbomb. As I did mention in my video about the leaked episodes that I honestly don't know if they ever did show up online because I haven't been looking for them. I will not be watching any leaks, so please do not spoil any of the upcoming Stevenbomb episodes in the comments down below. Do not expect that I have seen them, but keep in mind that I will be reviewing each episode the night that it airs, all week long, and I'm going to have an additional 2 reviews for you this weekend as well. Now that shameless plugging is out of the way, guys, what did you think of this episode if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Again, without spoilers of the other Stevenbomb episodes. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.